Hello, good people. Welcome back to another blessed message with Lady Ni, also known as Minister A. Ow. Okay, so right now we're going to talk about the 5 stages of grief. Okay, so grief or laments, when you're going through something, often grief comes when you lose someone important to you, someone special. Death is a big time period where people experience some sort of grief, and there's a process that many people don't really know the words. You don't have the words, you don't have the words. It's like you're living on the verge of tears often. You're going through life, and because of a loss, you're on the verge of tears, and it's unexplainable, okay? So there is some sort of explanation behind the feelings that we process, during our grieving process, okay? Yeah, during our grieving experience. So let's go through them, and we're going to reference scripture and then we'll tie it all together, okay? So there are 5 stages, which starts with the idea of denial. Especially when you're losing somebody important to you, you might go on as if it hasn't happened. Nothing has happened. I'm just gonna keep on going with my routine. You find this often with people who have like jobs and other things going on. They'll continue to immerse themselves in that employment instead of sitting with their feelings. You know, you don't want to sit there and cry and think about the loss. You want to get involved in activities that will keep your mind focused on something else. So that's the phase of denial. It hasn't happened. Some people may refer to this phase as it hasn't hit you yet. Excuse me. So it's like you're still like, okay, it's just happened. So you're really not feeling the fact that it's permanent. The person isn't coming back. And honestly, this may take a while for you to get used to in your life. Then there's anger, feeling like this is so unfair. Why does this happen to me? God, why did you let this happen? You know? And again, grief is often associated with death of a loved one or someone in your life, but it can be associated with multiple things. If you're losing a job, you might go through a grieving phase, a grieving process. You might be angry. Why did this happen to me? I've been here 20 years. Why y'all do this to me? Anger. And let's emphasize the fact that it's okay to experience emotions. I think that's the problem. We want to hide our true emotions. It's okay to experience it. It's the way you express it that matters. It's the way that you actually deal with it, that matters. Everyone gets upset. Everyone gets angry. That doesn't mean we express it the same way. Some people have adapted coping skills that help to allow them to go through life without taking it out on someone else, without spiraling out of control, letting their emotions get the best of them. So after you go through the denial, the anger, then there's bargaining. This is where it's like, take me, Lord, instead, okay? Or you might say some things like, I won't do this again, Lord, if you do this time, if only I had listened to such and such, So you start, this is the phase where you start questioning. You're trying to negotiate with God, like, come on. So you revisit the past often. You start to have memories and reflect on woulda, coulda, shoulda, basically. That's the bargaining. It's like you're like, I'm not really ready to accept that this situation has happened or these things have transpired in my life. So I'm going to try to get God to listen to me, okay? And this phase is actually essential when it comes to developing your relationship with Christ. Because it's at this point where you're teetering on whether or not you're going to fully give yourself to Christ, or if you're going to continue to walk in a sin-filled path. So a lot of times people come to Jesus. This is like the come to Jesus moment. You know what I mean? The bargaining phase, when you're like, okay, I really need to reconsider some things in my life, especially if you have lost someone to violence, or something that has compelled you to reconsider some of the activities you participate in, some of the places you go. This is the moment where you're awakened. You might hear the call from God. And we'll talk about the calling that you may experience from the Lord. There's different types. Everyone is not called the same way at the same time. We can see that when Jesus was choosing his disciples. But this bargaining phase is really significant to that grieving process. And it could actually reconnect some folk to their spirituality. Then following the bargaining stage is the depression stage. This is where the sadness, that intense grief comes about. That intense mourning, intense lamenting. Yeah, so this is where it's like you're really going through. You might cry a lot of tears, sleepless nights. You may not want to eat, so you lose your appetite. So now, when it comes to diagnoses, there is a difference between normal depression, normal grief, versus having a mental health crises or illness that you need to seek treatment from. We all will experience some sort of grieving process in our lives. But if at any point you or somebody is immersed in their depression and is not making any movement and is not looking like it's going to get well, then it would probably be best to speak to a doctor, even if it's your somatic doctor who deals with your general health. Yeah, so speak to someone about that. This is the part where people may have those feelings of not wanting to be in the world, anymore. So that's important that you connect to a mental health physician who can assist you with that. Really important. I always emphasize that we don't want to lose people who could have sought out treatment, sought out help. And yeah, in those instances, we definitely need people praying, but we also need people referring people to certain specialists, and people also being advocates for themselves, and self-initiating those steps towards seeking out treatment. So that's important. And then the final stage is acceptance. That's where you're like, you know what? I'm going to have to deal with this. I'm going to have to accept the fact that this person is no longer coming back, or I'm no longer going to be at that job. I no longer have that house. For people who have lost things, materialistic things, I'm no longer going to have that item. You have to accept it and move on from it. And that's the final stage. So the stages of grief may not always be in that order. Some steps may be skipped altogether. You can go from denial to acceptance real quick. It depends on where you are in life. And for people who have lost multiple people, honestly, you start to cope differently. I'm not going to say better, because what is better? You just cope differently, So these are the stages of grief. It's important that we're aware of that grieving process, and a part of sharing the gospel and ministering is also ensuring that our mental health is being addressed, because I think that's often overlooked when we talk of things related to the Bible. But that is just as important as your physical health. You can't see, you get some glasses. All of those things. So when it comes to mental health, it's important to just be in tune with you as an individual. That's the first step, is knowing yourself. To anything you want to address in life, you got to know your flaws. You got to know your weaknesses as well as your strengths. You have to know yourself, because if not, the world gonna try to tell you who you are. They gonna subject you to things that may not be in your best interest. They may not benefit you. We say all this to say that, so once you are aware of these different experiences that you may have during a grieving process, then you can address it properly. You know, to be aware is to be alive. So people perish, like the Bible says, from the lack of knowledge, because we don't know. You know, you having all these feelings, you think you alone, you doing this by yourself. No, nothing's new under the sun. Been there, done that. That has happened to someone else. Someone has studied that. Someone knows some tactics that you can use to get through it. You know, so that's why we seek out mental health professionals. Not because they're going to cure you, but because they'll be able to assist. They'll provide resources. You know, they'll sit with you. They'll talk you through certain things. So, say all that to say, bring us to Lamentations 3. Okay? The book of Lamentations. So, this is a book where people are being subjected. So, it was written by the prophet Jeremiah. He was grieving the destruction of Jerusalem. Okay, so you have to read your whole entire Bible. Okay? So is when you're grieving something, again, you're experiencing denial, anger, bargaining, you know, depression, acceptance. You're going through all that. So even if it's related to a city, so when you're watching traumatic things, traumatic events take place, you still go through the grieving process. So this is one of the things that he experienced. According to Lamentations 3, starting at verse 46, it says, all our enemies have opened their mouths wide against us. We have suffered terror and pitfalls, ruin and destruction. So the city is getting tore up. You hear me? But this is the key that we're going to hone in on. Verse 48 says, streams of tears flow from my eyes because my people are destroyed. I am sad. That's what the prophet is saying. He said, I'm sad about this. Again, grief. You know, it's even if things aren't happening directly to you, when you see other people exposed to certain things or going through certain things, you might be empathetic and you might experience some emotional toll on you. Yeah, you might experience that emotional toll that's associated with someone else. You know, when we hear about things that happen in other countries, we still have some sort of feeling, some compassion towards it. You know, you understand that that's not right. We know right from wrong. So when we see things are not right, we start to feel some sort of emotion. Yes, we start to be impacted. So this is the result of witnessing this destruction. In verse 49, it says, my eyes will flow unceasingly without relief until the Lord looks down from heaven and sees. What I see brings grief to my soul because of all the women of my city. So the key here is that his eyes are flowing with tears unceasingly. So he is crying. That's what it says. That's how much grief he's experiencing. And I know, again, we've all been there. And if you haven't, keep on living. Keep on living. If you never have experienced any type of grief or separation, something that made you cry, weep, lament, brought sorrow to your heart, you know, and it's a natural emotion. It's a natural thing to go through. So it's okay. It's going to be all right. But the thing is, I think sometimes when we're in those situations and in that moment, you forget that we serve an awesome God. We serve an excellent God. So that is going to be temporary. What does it say? Weeping may endure for a night, but joy will come in the morning. You hear me? You have to believe that. You have to hold on to that fact that yes, though some of the experiences are difficult, they are challenging, You know, I'd rather not go through this, Lord. However, joy is coming in the morning. And if you don't believe me, let's go to Revelation 21. Okay. And we're going to be at verse 4. It says, he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. And that is what our hope is based on. That's what we basing our hope on. That's why we love the Lord so much, because we know he already has covered our backs. He has us covered. We are going towards new. The new, you hear me? We are not going to be in a state of grief indefinitely. It's going to come to an end. You know, so though you weep, it's temporary. Joy is coming in the morning. You know, and this tells you everything you need to know. Revelation, that's the last book of the Bible, which means that this is finished. This is complete. This is going to happen. It says he will wipe every tear. Not one, but every. So even if it's seeming like it's unceasingly, like it won't even stop. You been there? I've been there. It just coming down. You feel like it's not going to end. He's going to wipe every tear. And again, there will be no more death or mourning. So we're going to get to that great place that God has promised, where we will no longer grieve. There will be no crying or pain. It will be a new order. That's the thing. The old order of things has passed away. You know, and that is what our hope is grounded on. That's what we're looking forward to. These things of this world is going to pass. You hear me? So you have to maintain your hope, maintain your loyalty to the Lord Jesus Christ, you know, and continue to walk righteously despite whatever situation you may find yourself in. You know, whatever person is coming up against you, you know, in whatever situation is just distressing you, you know. So it doesn't matter what happens, what is lost on this earth, because God has promised us riches and glory, okay? So we just have to keep pressing forward, going forward, never stopping. It's non-stop. Non-stop commitment to the Lord, okay? Yeah. And, you know, again, sometimes I feel like you're living on the verge of tears, but he's going to wipe every single one of them. And that's the thing you have to hold on to. You know, the tear, you have to know it's temporary. This is temporary. Every time the tear creep up, it's temporary. He's going to wipe every single one, okay? So, be peace-filled always. Walk in righteousness. Talk to you soon.